We all love a good redemption story, don't we? The sort of catharsis we get when we see a character go from their lowest lows, from villainy, to being one of the good guys, to being one of the best characters in the show. We all love that, right? I mean, think back to characters like Zuko, or Vegeta, or even Alex Karev, if you know, you know. But what constitutes redemption? What would you consider making a character redeemed? And I think sometimes it's a little too black and white when we see a character just go from doing awful things to just being accepted by the good guys. For some characters, it's easier because their acts weren't as heinous, or they just weren't as bad of a person from the offset with someone like Zuko. But today, I want to present the curious case of one Reggie Franklin, or as you might know him better, A-Train, and to really ask the question of, is his redemption worth it? Did A-Train actually make steps towards being redeemed? And can you even come back from some of the shit that he did? Because let's not mince words. When we first meet A-Train, he is a terrible person.
I can't stop.
A-Train says that he can't stop, but in reality, he just simply won't. A-Train doesn't really care about the fact that he just killed someone. A-Train doesn't even really care. He is seen joking about it at the club with one of his friends. That's because in this world, in the world of the boys, superheroes, especially popular ones like A-Train, almost never face repercussions for the actions that they take, especially once they're in the Seven. A-Train is pretty much solely motivated by his status, how much money he is able to make as a superhero, and pretty much nothing else. He's motivated by his own self-interests. And even when he has to give an apology to Huey for killing his girlfriend, he doesn't really care to give much of a decent apology. Dude can't even remember Huey's face. When Huey shows up at his own house a few days later, A-Train doesn't even recognize the guy. That's how disassociated and disconnected he is from the fact that he has just committed a murder and pretty much any consequences for any of the actions that he takes. It's very evident throughout this first season that A-Train only cares about fulfilling his own self-serving wants, and he does so not only at the detriment of his own body, because he has been taking steroids. Essentially, he has been injecting himself with Compound V to make himself faster, because he wants to win the title of world's fastest man once again, especially as he's getting into older age for Speedster. And in the process, he is damaging the relationship he has with his girlfriend, Popclaw, somebody he says he loves, but he is very willing to lie to her. He lied to her and said that the whole world would get to know that A-Train has a girlfriend, that she would get to stand there up with him and present herself to the world. A-Train lied about that because it would have been too hard to tell her the truth and have an honest conversation that Vought wouldn't let that happen. But he doesn't care. He doesn't care at all. All he cares about is making sure he has the Compound V so that he can run faster. And once again, at least right now, there are no consequences for what A-Train has done. He wins the race. He is the fastest man alive, and he has a girlfriend watching at home who is more than excited to cheer for him, even if he doesn't care about her. As a matter of fact, A-Train quite literally in an interview was asked about whether or not he has a girlfriend, and he said he's going to keep his options open for tonight, and if anybody wants to swing by, they can. Now, it's worth noting that Popclaw is a former addict, and I can't fully blame A-Train for her relapsing, as everybody has to make their own decision, but he surely did not help in her making that decision with the way he spoke about her in interviews and essentially abandoned her for the last few weeks, as we've been shown throughout this first season. And even when he does finally come back home to see her, he only comes back in a self-serving manner. He just wants to know who she told about Compound V. He doesn't even care about the fact that his girlfriend might have just killed somebody, which he doesn't even know about because he hasn't even spoken to her. He doesn't care about the fact that the people who came look for the Compound V might intentionally try and harm her. He only comes back to speak with her because he is afraid of the consequences he will have to face if somebody finds out that A, Compound V is real, and B, that it defaults back onto him. He physically can't handle that, and so he runs Popclaw out of the country in a bid to save her. And the second something turns wrong for him, he goes back to see her, all to kill her. He quite literally walks in, speaks about their previous romance, acts as though he loves her so much that he cares and that he is just missing her, and he only does this so that he can kill her, so that the blame doesn't fall back on him. All of this to simply avoid taking responsibility for his actions. It's A-Train's #1 key feature. He physically cannot take responsibility in this first season for any of the actions that he takes. I think I've done a pretty good job in these first, 5-6 minutes of this video establishing that A-Train is a real piece of shit. He only does things that are self-serving and that would propel his career forward, or in any sort of bid to harm another person, such as when he shows up at Huey's house and essentially harasses not only Huey but his father and threatens his father. He goes here drugged up out of his mind on Compound V, all to assault Huey and blame Huey for things that he did himself.
You put her in danger, and then you threw her out like she was garbage. How does this not all start with you, Huey? The only difference between you and me is that I made a mistake. The that you did was on purpose.
But it's also worth noting that A-Train isn't 100% irredeemable in this first season. We see, if not anything to help bolster his character, is the fact that he genuinely cares about his brother. He cares about telling the story of where he grew up, from the fact that he came from the mud and got himself in the position of being a top hero, of being something better, of getting out of the place that he was, giving back to his community. Except Vought doesn't want that story told. They want a more upbeat tone to the story. And so he can't even tell or talk about the real past and traumas he went through when doing an interview. And to make it even worse, when he's asked about his ex-girlfriend Popclaw, he has no words to say. He just pretends she doesn't even exist, because it would be harmful to the brand to say that he was dating an ex-addict. So even A-Train's most redeemable quality, his brother, the one person who has literally been there for him from day one, he doesn't even listen to, he doesn't even really care about. His brother knows about his abuse of Compound V and is actively trying to tell him to stop taking it because it's killing him, literally. His bone density is shrinking, his heart is growing, it's killing him, but he doesn't want to listen. Part of this is that A-Train is going through a lot of things, all partly his fault, if not entirely. And he is defaulting back to Compound V, to being the fastest man alive, as his drug and crutch. And when A-Train ends up getting hurt and is unable to run and unable to be A-Train, and he has to be a regular person, when he has to face regular real-life people issues, like for example being accosted by a security guard as a black man at a mall, he can't handle it. His ego can't handle it. He has to default to being the A-Train. And this just pushes him further into his substance abuse. And it gets to the point that he pushes away the only person who was ever there for him, who ever actually truly cared, and that would be his brother. For a lot of people, that would be rock bottom. For A-Train, it isn't. But that doesn't mean that it didn't leave a lasting impact on him. A-Train just lost his brother, he has lost his girlfriend, and all of these are stemming from actions that he took. And even if he doesn't want to consciously admit it, subconsciously, he can't deny the fact that what he's doing is killing him, and he's not even being honest about it.
I didn't kill her. I know. I did.
For the first time in the entire show, we actually see A-Train take responsibility for his actions. But it literally comes at a point in which I thought the character was gonna die, because he has a heart attack from all of the Compound V he continued to shoot up. A-Train's actions finally have consequences, and he's being stripped of everything as we go into the second season. A-Train quite literally can barely function as a person throughout this second season. The first season was all about showing us how shitty of a person he is. The second season is showing us the consequences of his actions. Dude can barely function, let alone run. He is constantly having miniature heart attacks and or heart palpitations just from walking around and living a normal life. And the more he tries to run, the more strain he puts on his heart, the less he can do. As a matter of fact, dude isn't even the fastest man in the world. He might not even be top 20. And all of this comes with the fact that he's also disappointing Homelander. And if there's one thing you don't want to do is disappoint Homelander, because this ends up leading to A-Train being kicked off the 7. Because he can't run, he is effectively considered useless.
Oh, this. I'm not going.
A-Train, you can't run.
Yes, I can run.
Buddy, you think I don't know what's been going on?
And to make matters even worse, A-Train is now indebted not only to Starlight, but also Huey, the man he hurt the most, because they both saved his life at the end of the first season. If it wasn't for Huey's intervention and decision to try and save A-Train's life, he would have died. And something interesting about A-Train's character is that he doesn't like to be in debt to people. Nobody really does. But even when he is in debt to a person, he holds himself accountable to that debt and wants to repay it actively. Now, typically he does so in a self-serving manner, but I find it interesting that he just holds on to that piece of him. I think it's very clear, especially from the way A-Train acts throughout these first 2 seasons, that he is extremely self-serving. He does only care about himself and doesn't care about the collateral damage that happens around him. There's a guy who simply just wants to do some sort of good in the world, but A-Train pretty much keeps that buried because it's not good for his brand, it's not good for his money. That's the one thing he truly cares about too, is money. When Starlight threatens to reveal that none of the Supes are naturally born and they all come from Compound V, the first thing A-Train jumps to is don't fuck with the money, because that's what he cares about the most, is getting paid. And the only reason he doesn't rat out Annie is because he's also technically complicit in doing this. He technically helped her out by not exposing her the first time she ended up with a vial of Compound V, because he felt in debt to her for saving his life. All of this while he's actively being written out of the biggest movie of the year. He's actively being written out of the 7. And all of this while he's also being accosted by one of the 7's brand new members, Stormfront.
So why don't you tell me?
Well, I think you do know. Some people are quality and others are garbage.
All of this culminates with A-Train getting closer to a character known as the Deep. And if you know anything about the Deep, he's not exactly someone you'd want to rub shoulders with. But the Deep is going through his own character arc that is pretty much an inverse of A-Train's, and deserves its own video that I will talk about eventually. Regardless, the Deep and A-Train get close due to the fact that they have both essentially been kicked out of the 7, and are being picked up by this mega religious church that promises to put them back in the spotlight, to get them back onto the 7 if they do everything the church says and pretty much buy into the philosophies of the church. And so the Deep does, he buys in immediately, but A-Train's a little too smart for that. He doesn't really buy into it, but knows that this is taking steps towards getting to where he wants to be. And so he is more than willing to play nice with the Deep, somebody he actually does not like. A-Train doesn't like the Deep, he hates the dude, but is willing to get him a present and pretend to be nice to him, all in an event to get closer to try and get back into the 7. And when all of that isn't working out, he decides to get back into the 7 a different way. He decides to collect information on Stormfront and give it to both Huey and Starlight. And you would think this is the point where A-Train turns it around. He's at the lowest he's ever been, stripped of everything, and is being forced to work with the good guys in order to get back his place in the 7. But he doesn't really change. None of this was about being a good person, doing the right thing. He only gave the information that Stormfront was a Yahtzee so that he could get back into the Seven. Because at the end of the day, he doesn't really care about any of that other stuff. To him, it doesn't matter. All that matters is being in the Seven and the status and wealth that comes with it. That's because that's all he's left for himself. He has drilled out his entire life and hollowed it of anything else except being a part of the Seven. It's his entire identity, being the fastest man in the world. He doesn't have a girlfriend. He doesn't have a brother. He doesn't have a support system outside of being rich and famous and fast. And while he got back into the Seven and got what he wanted, he ultimately gains nothing from it. And we see that throughout season 3. One of the very first interactions we get of A-Train is Homelander accosting him for being fat, for not running and eating food, and essentially nearly killing A-Train for speaking back underneath his breath towards Homelander. The scene is supposed to be a showing of how far gone Homelander is, but it's also a showing of how far gone A-Train is because he just takes it. There's nothing he can do against Homelander because he's not the stronger hero, but he decides to stick around anyways because he has nothing else. And A-Train realized that. And so what does any good sellout do when they realize they have nothing left to give? He's going to profiteer off of his blackness. He is essentially going to try and create a show surrounding and selling and exploiting his heritage, all for his own personal gain. And he wants his brother to get in on the action too. He wants his brother to be supportive of his rebrand, because he wants to pretend that he cares about his African heritage when he doesn't even know it for the first part. He doesn't even know about his real African heritage, and he doesn't care to know. All he cares about is the rebrand, the potential uptick with black people when it comes to supporting Vought. That's all he cares about, the potential money. So when his brother tries to open A-Train's eyes to a true and real problem, which is a superhero named Blue Hawk, who is this season's stand-in for police brutality against the black people, and when A-Train sees this, he says he'll do something, but knowing his track record, we just assume he'll do nothing, because he doesn't really care. He doesn't even care about the community around him that is being hurt by the corporation he works for. He doesn't care until his brother brings it up to him. He's wearing that black power suit, but he doesn't actually give a about black people. But oddly enough, A-Train does actually make an effort to try and at least get a talk with Blue Hawk, and he asks Ashley, the head of PR, to have a talk with Blue Hawk to try and get him to apologize to the black community. And then he turns around and films a commercial in which he has to stop rioters and bring rioters and police together by giving them a Vought-sponsored drink. It's like the dude takes one step forward and then has a backflip backwards into just doing whatever self-serves him the best. Once again, profiting off of the black community's struggles, because this is the stand-in for BLM that was happening at the time, all for him to profit. But yet again, he'll take another step in the right direction. In front of Homelander and the rest of the Seven, A-Train brings up the fact about talking to Blue Hawk. Now, the way in which he has to structure it makes sense. He structures it as though they have to get an increase with black people from a buyer standpoint. Now, I want to make a quick side note here. I truly can't discern whether or not A-Train is simply bringing up the fact that he wants to talk to Blue Hawk and potentially get him to apologize because it will actually bring up PR standings for Vought within the black community, or if this is his way of actually getting Homelander to listen to him when he wants to do something positive for the black community, but has to phrase it in a very specific way so that the higher-ups ahead of him will actually listen to him. You see, that's another part. You never really know with A-Train until the next scene. And I think that's important for his character development, especially in this third season. And surprise, surprise, turns out it doesn't work because the Deep pointed out that Homelander and Blue Hawk share a lot of the same base core white fan base. No real surprises there. And so the two of them end up getting into a confrontation and a scuffle. And it's interesting that Homelander skips over helping A-Train and instead chooses to help the Deep. For a lot of characters, this would be eye-opening. It would be, but for A-Train, is it really? And I mean, A-Train's even given the chance to flip sides, to join the boys.
We could do something about it.
What do you have in mind?
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, I can't put the blame on you. A-Train ended up telling Homelander about Starlight's plan and about the boys' plan, all to overthrow him. And in the process, A-Train got Supersonic killed, all because he would rather be in Homelander's good graces than out of it. Because he would rather stay with the people that hate him than potentially leave and take any sort of consequences for those actions. But as a reward for Uncle Tomming his way into Homelander's good graces, A-Train is given the discussion with Blue Hawk that he wanted. The ability for Blue Hawk to finally apologize in front of the black community, and he thinks he's doing something great. But to the surprise of nobody except A-Train, Blue Hawk goes in there and gives a half apology that he doesn't even care about.
To the residents of Trenton, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. As you know, superheroes often...
Blue Hawk came in there with an already prepared speech. He doesn't actually care about talking to the black community. And when he is presented with this by the people of the community that he has hurt, he gets aggressive. He escalates the situation, and he just looks for any excuse to attack the people there, using his superpowers on a group of unarmed people, all to hurt them. And by the time A-Train even figures this out, it's already too late. The only person who has ever stood by him and he's shown genuine care for, he gets his brother nearly killed and permanently paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of his life. And when he tries to grandstand about this and stand on a soapbox to preach to Ashley that Blue Hawk needs more than just sensitivity training, she's very quick to remind him of the 3 dead bodies he's left in his own wake, the people that he has hurt and that she has spent weeks trying to fix on a PR level for him. But this doesn't mean that he doesn't go without reflection. A-Train finally understands what it means to have the people around him be hurt. He finally gets what it means to have something taken from him, truly taken from him, something he really cared about. And so when he sees Huey at the Herogasm party and Huey demands an apology from him, he actually gives one, a real heartfelt apology.
I'm sorry. Is that what you want to hear? 'Cause I am. It's fucked up. Seeing somebody that you love get hurt like that. I'm sorry.
But like always, it's one step forward, a backflip backwards, because he only showed up to Herogasm to kill Blue Hawk. And that's pretty much the only reason he was there. He's not there for a sense of justice. He's not there to make amends, to make things right. He is doing this because he is angry and he is hurting, and he wants to kill the man that hurt him. He wants revenge. And in the process, dude got himself killed. He quite literally ended up dying from a heart attack from using his powers once again. And in one of the best twists of fate ever, and most well-deserved, A-Train got Blue Heart's Hawk. He has the heart of a racist living inside him that saved his life. Blue Hawk saved his life. And to make things even worse, when he goes to tell his brother of his great triumph, of what he was able to do for his brother, for him, his brother just throws it in his face. He tells him that's not what he wanted. He wanted to see Blue Hawk in prison. He did not want to see this. A-Train did this for himself, and his brother tells him that.
No, Nate.
I didn't want that. I wanted my kids to see his mugshot on the TV. And now he's...
I stopped him.
This was the final straw for A-Train's brother. He basically doesn't want A-Train anywhere near his life, near his kids, or anything. A-Train has officially lost everything he has ever held dear, all for being on the 7. He sold out. He did all of this work, all of this trying to get back into the 7, trying to fake this whole black power persona. He did all of it to gain nothing. He's got a psycho, unstable boss. The people at Vought don't care about him nor the issues that he actually cares about, and he's essentially trapped. It's poetic in a sense. A-Train got everything he wanted at the cost of everything that he had. A-Train has finally hit rock bottom. It took him 4 seasons to hit the bottom. And let's do a check-in real quick, see how he's doing in this 4th season. His psycho boss demands one of his coworkers, whom he hates, gives him a so, there's that. All because Homelander just wants to have some rules. Surrounded by 2 literal racists who would rather see him hung than be in the 7.
I bet A-Train here would have given my great-great-granddaddy a run for his money.
Oh.
Huh? But we would have caught you.
Oh.
I guess we'll never know.
And forced to once again lie about how he came up, about who was training him. He has to participate in a white savior bullshit movie in which a white coach saves a black athlete from the drugs and the hardened street life. And he has to do all of this, but it's very clear that A-Train is apathetic to pretty much any of this. He hates it. He doesn't smile. He doesn't laugh. He hates being surrounded by the people at Vought because they hate him. He is self-internalizing that hate. All while having to be forced to be complicit in the murder of innocent people for the gains of Vought and Homelander. Now, it is interesting because A-Train has not really cared about the deaths of innocents, particularly through these first 3 seasons, but in this 4th one, he seems to genuinely care. While he is a participant in the death of these innocent people, he's not actively partaking. He doesn't want to hit them with the baseball bats. He doesn't want to hurt them, but he can't just let them leave, because then that would put him in jeopardy against Homelander. And the one and only thing he used to take comfort in was the fact that he could talk to his nephews. He could boast about being a superhero, about saving people. He can have that little bit of famous nuance, being recognized as A-Train, impressing his nephews, and you get the sense that he really does enjoy this. He really does care about them. But he threw that chance away far earlier.
You want to tell him or should I? Come on, man. Let's not make a big thing. That movie theater in Idaho? That was a soundstage in the Bronx. That terrorist? That was a stuntman. Those mountains? They added those in post. I know because I was there.
It's revealed to us that all those saves are false. He never did a single one of them. He was never the good guy he portrayed himself as being, and his nephews have to hear that. And now he looks like a fraud in front of the only people that he really had left. When his brother was done with him, his nephews are done with him. And all of this while Starlight and Huey watch and were pretty much planning to blackmail him. But since they didn't, A-Train decides to throw them a bone. At least that's what he wants to portray to them. He ends up giving them information on the 2 victims that Homelander had killed. I personally think at this point, A-Train is fed up. He's had enough. And he might actually be making steps in the right direction towards being a better person. Now, A-Train does this all at the detriment to himself. The 7 is desperately looking for the leak. Who would have leaked this information, and essentially they want them dead. So A-Train is on borrowed time for all intents and purposes. Yet despite all of this, when he's tricked by MM to come outside and to speak to his brother, which is really MM in disguise, he ends up talking to him, and Mother's Milk is trying to convince A-Train to flip. He feels A-Train is close to flipping. He believes that A-Train will flip.
I think you spent so much time wearing that stupid black power suit, pretending to give a that something stuck.
And MM is right. Something did stick. A-Train decides to stick around. He decides to be an informant for the boys and be the man on the inside. He goes out of his way to save Huey from Homelander in a further episode. Once again, risking his life for nothing, not even a thank you. A-Train then goes out of his way again, when he's confronting Huey to try and keep him out of danger. He then goes out of his way again when Huey demands that he gets Compound V so that Huey might have the chance to save his own dad. A-Train goes out of his way to do it again, to try and repay the debt that he owes to Huey. He risks his life by going into Homelander's room because Homelander is keeping stock and track of all of the V available and taking it. But in the process, A-Train gets caught by Ashley, who was also there to defile Homelander's toilet because she got fired and she was mad. And so the characters are now going to share a sort of secret bond. That's just important for later. Because A-Train did all of this for what? We're so used to expecting a reason for him to do these things. Is it blackmail? Is it this? Is it that? He's genuinely doing these things because he cares. And he gets a consequence for that.
You're right. I was gonna tell you to go fuck yourself, but I changed my mind. We're good.
Not all consequences are negative. A-Train actually received positive reinforcement for doing the right thing for once, and it spurs him to keep trying to do the right thing, even though he is 90% sure that Vought knows that he stole the V, and was the one who leaked the information. But as always with A-Train, it's one step forward, a tumble backwards. This time it's more like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, as he ropes Ashley into this, gets her to be complicit so the two of them can come up with a plan to save both their ass. And what was the plan in question? It was to pin the blame on somebody else. Now, I don't 100% think this dude is necessarily the most innocent, but he definitely didn't deserve to die, and especially not in the fashion he is going to die. A-Train is essentially complicit in another murder. Good intentions, really poor execution, once again, on A-Train's part. But we see that he is visibly shaken by all the violence in front of him as the seasons have gone on. And to just put another nail in the coffin of his swap of sides, A-Train goes out of his way during the Tech Night party to save MM. And for the first time in his superhero career, he actually did something heroic. Something the public wouldn't know about, fans wouldn't know about, nobody but a little boy knows about. The little boy saw him save the day and looked at him as though he was a hero. And it's the one really genuinely great thing A-Train did in costume as a hero. And when he figures out that MM wants to give up and wants to leave and go away, just make it all disappear, he goes back to rope MM back into the fold to try and bring him back, because Mother's Milk brought A-Train into this. He gave A-Train a chance at redemption, a second chance, or like third chance if we're really counting, but regardless, A-Train really wanted this, and he wasn't so ready to give up on MM either, because for once he didn't feel like a failure. He didn't hate himself. He felt like a true hero. And we also see this manifested when he saves the boys from the Deep and from Black Noir. He completely blows his cover, all in the event of saving people. He is doing things and going out of his way to do things with little to no actual reward, at least on A-Train's scale. And for once, we see him thinking outside of himself. He goes to try and save Ashley, to get her out of the country, in which the same way he plans to do for his family. He thought of someone else before he even thought of himself. For once, we see him being selfless, and I think that's a huge step for A-Train. And while Ashley doesn't go with him, he at least tried. And so with all of that laid out, with you seeing his progression from the first season to the 4th season, do you consider A-Train redeemed? Because only really you can answer that question.
There were no screaming fans, no cameras. Nobody even knew, except for this one kid. That felt better than anything that I had ever done at Vought. Because for once, I didn't hate myself.
I put
want my opinion, I think A-Train is nearly there. I think he has done a lot of work and taken a lot of steps in the right direction, but he's not 100% to being redeemed, not on a Zuko level, at least for now. But he's inching his way forward to getting there in a fairly realistic way. You don't just wake up one morning and become good. It is a process that takes time and takes genuine work on the part of the person trying to progress. Now, of course, I could be making this video completely prematurely, and he could do a 180 next season and join Homelander again, but I highly doubt it. I think he'll end up going out as a hero, redemption arc complete, and I had a great time watching it. It's about that time in the video where I take a moment to just thank you all for watching. And if you want to leave a like, please leave a like. It helps out the channel a lot. If you want to sub, it's free and you can always unsubscribe later. If you dislike the video, please dislike it and tell me why down in the comments. I'm always seeking to improve my content. And finally, I run a Patreon, which would show you this entire video completely unedited. And as well, I show all of my videos early there with 0 edits, 0 changes, all for $1 a month. But please do not feel obligated or feel like you have to go join my Patreon. Only do so if you are in a financial situation in which you can do it. Your viewership is more than enough. And now it's time that I shout out every single one of my patrons in the $5 tier or above. Starting with MC Bomb 27, Donovan Gomez, Dakota Rawson, Video Gamer 75, and Golden Boy 420. Thank you all for supporting my content. I appreciate you guys, and all of you have an absolutely fantastic day.